Hello and welcome to the Idiot Book Nook. My name is Blazewing, my pronouns are she, her, and they, them.
I am the Reading Dragon, and my pronouns are she, her.
I'm Lady Punnett, my pronouns are primarily she, her, sometimes they, them. It is a she, they kind of day.
She, they. Awesome. We're working...
I know, we haven't had one of those in a while.
Absolutely. We're working on the Amulet of Samarkand, the first book in the Bartimaeus Trilogy. And we are chapter 29 today and episode 45. Guys, we have 15 chapters left of this book.
No.
Oh!
Out of 40
No!
out of 44 chapters, we have 15 left.
No, that can't be right.
Yeah, it is. I'm sorry.
But that makes no sense.
If you would like to follow us on our socials, you can do so at lanktr.ee/idiotbooknook. You can find all of our socials. You can find access to our podcast, our YouTube channel. And just as another piece of housekeeping, schedules have changed with us, so we may have to look at, unfortunately, reworking our podcast release schedule. If anything like that happens, we will let you know what we decide, and we may also be looking at bringing in a fourth member, so just keep that in mind. Times are changing, we gotta change with them, you know how it goes, unfortunately. Without the adulting, kinda everything falls apart, so...
Until Idiot Book Nook can support us all financially.
Correct. Anyways... Welcome to the Idiot Book Nook. It is a glorious morning. Again, we're doing chapter 29 of the Amulet of Samarkand. Who wants to give us a recap of what happened last chapter? Does anybody remember?
I can. Okay, so, last chapter we had some issues because all of a sudden Simon Lovelace, our enemy, who beats a child, who is just a general bad person altogether, appeared at our master's door. Master, having to be a decent host, lets him in.
Mm-hmm.
And also our master, or the master, locked Nathaniel, 11-year-old child, in a closet to deal with later.
No, he just locked him in his room.
Nope, he locked him in a closet. He locked him in a broom closet.
He did lock him in a broom closet.
I thought it was his office.
He locked him in his room, and then he locked him later in the broom closet.
Because he got out.
Bartimaeus had to help rescue him from the closet.
I don't remember this.
Don't worry about it.
Okay, yeah, it's also been 2 weeks.
Yeah, exactly. Anyways.
So anywho's it, Bartimaeus turned into a tiny, tiny spider to go spy on Lovelace and Underwood in the dining room, where Lovelace basically said, look, I know you stole the Amulet of Samarkand from me. I need you to return it, and then we can let bygones be bygones. Underwood, not knowing that Nathaniel was the one that told Bartimaeus to steal the amulet and hid it in his office, is like, how dare you come into my home and accuse me of doing something I would not do? I'm the one who investigates stolen property. How dare you? Does some cool summoning to basically try and scare Lovelace out. Simon does something that is equally as scary, and all of a sudden Underwood's like, fine. Also before that, Mrs. Underwood pulled like very much an MVP move and told Simon Lovelace, you're too skinny, have some food. Still my favorite moment of that chapter. So now Simon Lovelace and Arthur Underwood are going to his office. Arthur hoping to prove that Simon's wrong. Simon so he can get the thing. Bartimaeus is scurrying, either following them or scurrying back to Nathaniel, because Nathaniel managed, broom closet door was broken by Bartimaeus, and Mrs. Underwood is somewhere in the kitchen making food.
Not bad for a recap. It's been 2 weeks since we've gotten together, so good memory. You're like really into this, aren't you?
I have a very good memory when it comes to reading books.
I love it. With that being said, narrator, are you ready?
Hold on a second here. Let me just get over here. Alright. The Bartimaeus Trilogy, Book 1, The Amulet of Samarkand, written by Jonathan Stroud. Narrated by the Reading Dragon. Voice acted by the Reading Dragon, Blazewing 2010, and Lady Punnet. Chapter 29. Nathaniel. Nathaniel stood alone on the landing, gripping the banister as if he feared to fall. A murmur of voices came from the dining room below. It rose and fell, but he hardly registered it. The panic rushing in his head drowned out all other sounds. The only bad magician is an incompetent one. And what was incompetence? Loss of control? Loss of control. Slowly, steadily, over the last few days, everything had spiraled out of Nathaniel's control. First, Bartimaeus had learned his birth name. He had remedied that all right with the tobacco tin, but the respite had not lasted long. Instead, the disaster after... Instead, disaster after disaster had struck in quick succession. Bartimaeus had been captured by the government, Underwood had discovered his activities, and his career had been ruined before it had begun. Now, the demon refused to obey his orders, and Lovelace himself was at the door, and all he could do was stand and watch, helpless to react. He was at the mercy of the events he had set in motion. Helpless. A small noise sliced through his self-pity. A small noise sliced through his self-pity and jolted him upright. It was the gentle humming made by Mrs. Underwood as she padded along the hall from the kitchen toward the dining room. She was bringing tea. Nathaniel heard the clinking of the china on the tray she carried. A knock upon the door followed. More clinking as she entered. Then silence. In that moment, Nathaniel quite forgot his own predicament. Mrs. Underwood was in danger. The enemy was in the house. In a few moments, he would doubtless force or persuade Underwood to open his study for inspection. The amulet would be found. And then, what might Lovelace do to Mr. Underwood or his wife? Bartimaeus had told him to wait upstairs and be ready for the worst, but Nathaniel had had enough of helpless loitering. He was not done yet. The situation was desperate, but he could still act. The magicians were in the dining room. Underwood's study was empty. If he could slip inside and retrieve the amulet, perhaps he could hide it somewhere. Whatever Bartimaeus might say. Quietly, quickly, he stole downstairs to the landing below, to the level of his master's study and workrooms. The muffled voices from the ground floor were raised now. He thought he could hear Underwood shouting. Time was short. Nathaniel hastened through the rooms to the door leading to the study stairs. Here, he paused. He had not gone that way since he was 6 years old. Distant memories assailed him and made him shiver. But he shrugged them off. He passed onward, down the steps, and pulled up dead. Underwood's study door stood before him, daubed with its red five-pointed star. Nathaniel groaned aloud. He knew enough now to recognize a fire hex when he saw it. He would be incinerated the moment he touched the door. Without protection, he could not progress, and protection required a circle, a summons, careful preparation. and he had no time for that. He was helpless, useless. He beat his fist against the wall. From far away in the house came a noise that might have been a cry of fear. Nathaniel ran back up the stairs and through to the landing. And as he did so, he heard the dining room door open and footsteps sounding in the hall. They were coming. Then, from below, Mrs. Underwood's voice, anxious and inquiring, speared Nathaniel with a thrill of pain.
Is everything all right, Arthur?
The reply was dull, wary, almost unrecognizable.
I am just showing Mr. Lovelace something in my study. Thank you. We need nothing.
They were climbing the stairs now. Nathaniel was in an agony of indecision. What should he do? Just as someone turned the corner, he ducked behind the nearest door and closed it almost to. Breathing hard, he pressed his eye against the small crack that gave a view onto the landing. A slow procession passed. Mr. Underwood led the way. His hair and clothes were disordered, his eyes wild, his back bent as if by great weight. Behind walked Simon Lovelace, eyes hidden behind his glasses, his mouth a thin, grim slit. Behind him came a spider, scuttling in the shadows of the wall. The procession disappeared in the direction of the study. Nathaniel sank back, head spinning, nauseous with guilt and fear. Underwood's face, despite his extreme dislike of his master, to see him in that state rebelled against everything Nathaniel had been taught. Yes, he was weak. Yes, he was petty. Yes, he had treated Nathaniel with consistent disdain. But the man was a minister, one of the 300 in the government, and he had not taken the amulet. Nathaniel had. He bit his lip. Lovelace was a criminal. Who could tell what he might do? Let Underwood take the blame. He deserved it. He had never stuck up for Nathaniel. He had sacked Miss Lutyens. He let him suffer too. Why had Nathaniel put the amulet in the study in the first place, if not to protect himself when Lovelace came? He would stay out of the way, as the genie had said. Get ready to run, if necessary. Nathaniel's head sank into his hands. He could not run. He could not hide. That was the advice of a demon, treacherous and sly. Running and hiding were not the actions of an honorable magician. If he let his master face Lovelace alone, how would he live with himself again? When his master suffered, Mrs. Underwood would suffer too, and that would be impossible to bear. No, there was no help for it. Now that the crisis was upon him, Nathaniel found, to his surprise and horror, that he had to act. Regardless of the consequences, he had to intervene.
Watch your breathing into the mic.
Even to think of doing what he now did made him physically sick. Nevertheless, he managed it, little by little, step by dragging step. Out from behind the door, across the landing, along toward the study stairs, down the stairs, one at a time. With every step, his common sense screamed at him to turn and flee, but he resisted. To run would be to fail Mrs. Underwood. He would go in there and tell the truth, come what may. The door was open. The fiery hex diffused. Yellow light spilled from inside. Nathaniel paused at the threshold. His brain seemed to have shut down. He did not fully understand what he was about to do. He pushed at the door and went in, just in time to witness the moment of discovery. Lovelace and Underwood were standing by a wall cupboard with their backs to him. The cupboard doors gaped wide. Even as he watched, Lovelace's head craned forward eagerly like a hunting cat's, and his hand stretched out and knocked something aside. He gave a cry of triumph. Slowly, he turned and raised his hand before Underwood's corpse-white face. Nathaniel's shoulders slumped. How small it looked, the Amulet of Samarkand. How insignificant it seemed, as it hung from Lovelace's fingers on its slender gold chain. It swung gently, glinting in the steady light. Lovelace smiled.
Well, well, what have we here?
Underwood was shaking his head in confusion and disbelief. In those few seconds, his face had aged.
No.
He whispered.
A trick. You're framing me.
Lovelace wasn't even looking at him. He gazed at his prize.
I can't imagine what you thought you could do with this,
he said.
Summoning Bartimaeus on its own would have been quite enough to wear you out.
I keep saying,
Underwood said weakly.
I don't know anything about this Bartimaeus, and I don't know anything about your object nor how it got there.
Nathaniel heard a new voice speaking, high and shaky. It was his own.
He's telling the truth,
he said.
I took it. The person you want is me.
The silence that followed this statement lasted almost 5 seconds. Both magicians spun around on the instant, only to stare at him open-mouthed in shock. Mr. Underwood's eyebrows rose high, sank low, then rose again, mirroring his utter bewilderment. Lovelace wore an uncomprehending frown. Nathaniel took the opportunity to walk farther into the room.
It was I,
he said, his voice a little firmer now that the deed was done.
He knows nothing about it. You can leave him alone.
Underwood blinked and shook his head. He seemed to doubt the evidence of his senses. Lovelace remained quite still, his hidden eyes fixed on Nathaniel. The Amulet of Samarkand swung gently between his motionless fingers. Nathaniel cleared his throat, which was dry. What would happen now, he dared not guess. He had not thought beyond his confession. Somewhere in the room, his servant lurked, so he was not entirely defenseless. If necessary, he hoped Bartimaeus would come to his aid. His master found his voice at last.
What are you gibbering about, you fool? You can have no idea what we discussed. Leave here at once.
A thought occurred to him.
Wait. How did you get out of the room?
At his side, Lovelace's frown suddenly fractured into a twitching smile. He laughed quietly.
A moment, Arthur. Perhaps you are being too hasty.
For an instant, a fleeting glimpse of Underwood's
Irascibility.
irascibility returned.
Don't be absurd. This stripling cannot have committed the crime. He would have had to bypass my fire hex for a start, not to mention your own defenses.
And rise a djinn of 14th level.
Murmured Lovelace.
That, too.
Exactly. The notion is
Underwood gasped. I mean, that kind of gasp coming from him sounds legit. Sudden understanding dawned in his eyes.
Wait. Perhaps... Can it be possible? Only today, Lovelace, I caught this brat with summoning equipment, and Adelbrand's pentacle chalked out in his room. He had sophisticated books, the mouth of Ptolemy for one. I assumed he'd failed, was overambitious, but what if I was wrong?
Simon Lovelace said nothing. He never looked away from Nathaniel.
Just this past hour,
Underwood went on.
I caught him spying on me in my study. He had a scrying glass, something I had never given him. If he is capable of that, who knows what other crimes he might attempt?
Even so,
Lovelace said softly.
why would he steal from me?
Nathaniel could tell from his master's behavior that he had not recognized the amulet for what it was, and realized that this ignorance might yet save him. Would Lovelace believe the same was true for Nathaniel too? He spoke up quickly, trying to sound as much like a child as possible.
It was just a trick, sir.
He said.
A joke. I wanted to get back at you for hitting me that time. I asked the demon to take something of yours. Anything at all. I was going to keep that thing until I was older, and until I could find out what it was and how to use it. I hope it wasn't valuable, sir. I'm very sorry for putting you to any trouble.
He trailed off, excruciatingly aware how weak his story was. Lovelace just gazed at him. He could make out nothing from the man's expression. But his master, for one, believed him. His full fury was unleashed.
That is the last straw, Mandrake,
He cried.
I will have you up before the court. Even if you escape prison, you will be stripped of your apprenticeship and turned out into the street. I will cast you out. All jobs will be closed to you. You will become a pauper among commoners. Yes, sir.
Anything, if only Lovelace would leave.
I can only apologize, Lovelace.
Underwood drew himself up and puffed out his chest.
We have both been inconvenienced. He has betrayed me, and from you he has stolen a most powerful treasure, this amulet.
He glanced toward the small gold oval dangling from Lovelace's hand, and in that sudden, fatal instant, realized what it was. A short, suppressed intake of breath sounded against his teeth. It was a small noise, but Nathaniel heard it clearly enough. Lovelace didn't move. The color drained from Underwood's cheeks. His eyes darted toward Lovelace's face to see if he had noticed anything. Nathaniel's eyes did likewise. Through the blood pounding in his head, he heard Underwood struggling to continue where he had broken off.
And we shall both see him suitably punished. Yes, we will. He will regret the day when he ever thought to...
The other magician held up his hand. Instantly, Underwood was silenced.
Well, John Mandrake,
Simon Lovelace said.
I am almost very impressed. Yes, I have been inconvenienced. The last few days have been difficult for me. But see, I have my prize again, and all will now be well. Please do not apologize. To summon a djinn such as Bartimaeus at your age is no mean achievement. To control him over several days is even more surprising. You left me frustrated too, which is a rare event, and Underwood ignorant, which is somewhat less unusual. All very clever. Only at the end have you fallen down. What possessed you to own up to your actions? I might have dealt quietly with Underwood and left you alone.
His voice was soft and reasonable. Underwood urgently tried to speak. Underwood urgently tried to speak, but Lovelace interrupted him.
Quiet man. I want to hear the boy's reason.
Because it wasn't his fault.
Nathaniel said stolidly.
He knew nothing. Your quarrel was with me, whether you knew so or not. He should be left out of it. That's why I came down.
A sense of the utter futility of his action weighed down upon him. Lovelace chuckled.
Some childish concept of nobility, is it?
He said.
I guessed as much. The honorable course of action. Heroic, but stupid. Where did you get that notion from? Not from Underwood here, I'll bet.
I robbed you because you wronged me.
Nathaniel continued.
I wanted to get back at you. That's all there is to it. Punish me if you want. I don't care.
His attitude of surly resignation concealed a growing hope. Maybe Lovelace did not realize that they knew about the amulet. Maybe he would administer some token punishment and go. Underwood was evidently hoping the same thing. He grasped Lovelace eagerly by the arm.
As you have seen, Simon, I am entirely innocent in this affair. It is this wicked, scheming boy. You must deal with him as you wish. Whatever sentence fits the crime, you may administer it. I leave it entirely up to you.
Gently, Lovelace disengaged.
I'm pretty sure that's not what he did, as he gently disengaged himself from Lovelace.
I was going to say disengaged. You bot.
Keep going. You're good. Yep. This episode's gonna require editing anyways.
Gently, Lovelace disengaged himself.
Thank you, Underwood. I shall administer his punishment shortly.
Good.
After disposing of you.
Oh, what?
For a second, Underwood froze. Then, with a turn of speed unexpected in a man of his age, he ran for the open door. Just as he passed Nathaniel, a gust of wind from nowhere slammed the door tight shut. Underwood rattled the handle and pulled with all his strength. But it remained fast. With a snarl of fear, he spun around. He and Nathaniel stood facing Simon Lovelace across the room. Nathaniel's legs shook. He looked around wildly for Bartimaeus, but the spider was nowhere to be seen. With fastidious care, Lovelace took the Amulet of Samarkand by its chain and hung it around its neck.
I'm not stupid, John,
he said.
It is possible that you do not know what this object is, but frankly, I cannot take that chance. And certainly, poor Arthur knows.
At this, Underwood stretched out a clawing hand and grasped Nathaniel around the neck. His voice was cracked with panic.
Yes, but I will say nothing. You can trust me, Lovelace. You may keep the amulet for all eternity for all I care, but the boy is a meddling fool. He must be silenced before he blabs. Kill him now, and the matter will be finished.
His nails dug into Nathaniel's skin. He thrust him forward. Nathaniel cried out in pain. Bitch. A smirk extended across Lovelace's face.
Such loyalty from a master to his apprentice. Very touching. You see, John, Underwood and I are giving you a final lesson in the art of being a magician, and perhaps with our help you will understand your error in owning up to me today. You believed in the notion of the honorable magician, who takes responsibilities for his actions. More propaganda. Such a thing does not exist. There is no honor, no nobility, no justice. Every magician acts only for himself, seizing each opportunity he can. When he is weak, he avoids danger, which is why second-raters plod away within the system. Arthur knows all about that. Don't you, Underwood? But when he is strong, he strikes. How do you think Rupert
Devereux
himself came to power? His master killed the previous prime minister in a coup 20 years ago, and he inherited the title.
Coup.
That is the truth
coup.
of it. I
Not
said coup. Whatever. This is how things are always done. When I use the amulet next week, I will be following in a grand tradition, reaching back to Gladstone.
The glasses flashed. A hand was raised, ready to begin a gesture.
It may console you to know that even before you arrived, I was resolved to kill you and everyone in this house. I cannot leave anything to chance. So your stupidity in coming here has actually changed nothing.
An image of Mrs. Underwood, downstairs in the kitchen, flashed through Nathaniel's mind. Tears flooded in his eyes.
Please.
You are a weak boy, just like your master.
Lovelace clapped his hands. The light in the study suddenly darkened. A tremor ran across the floor. Nathaniel sensed something appearing in the far corner of the room, but fear froze him in place. He dared not look to see. At his side, Underwood uttered the words of a defensive charm. A shimmering green net of protective threads rose up to enfold him. Nathaniel was excluded, defenseless.
Master!
At that moment, like a shaft collapsing in a slate mine, a terrible voice echoed through the room.
Your wish.
Oh, sorry. Who did you
Now that works.
Your wish.
Lovelace's voice.
Destroy them both. Anything else living in the house, burn it to the ground with all its contents.
Underwood gave a great cry.
Take the boy! Leave me!
He pushed Nathaniel with frantic strength. Nathaniel sprawled forward, stumbled, and fell. His eyes were blind with tears. He tried to rise, conscious only of his utter helplessness. Close by sounded a splintering noise. He opened his mouth to scream. Then claws descended and seized him around the throat.
And thus ends Chapter 9 of the Amulet of Samarkand. And Underwood, you fucking coward!
Like I said, Underwood is a fucking bitch! Underwood is fucking Umbridge.
I was really, really hoping that, like, Underwood would have been like the really, really strict teacher that wasn't good at emotional content but still wanted students to somewhat succeed.
Yep.
Kind of like how we discussed in previous chapters, where it was like he was just preparing him for, like, the bad world of magicians. But no.
Underwood's...
Just no.
He's a brown-nosing weasel.
He is a second-rate magician.
Yeah.
Self-serving, second-rate magician concerned only with his own safety. He said, "Take the boy, leave me." Yep. Sacrificing Nathaniel for himself.
And he's also effectively sacrificing his wife as well, because he's not mentioning anything about protecting his wife.
Nathaniel, on the other hand, has a, like, from what we've seen here at the end of this chapter, just from what we've seen at the end of this chapter, one of Nathaniel's last thoughts is Mrs. Underwood. Yeah. Which means he actually gives a shit. He actually cares.
Mm-hmm. He's not a complete socio or psychopath.
Arthur, on the other hand, fucking dick.
He's a sociopath, yes. A sociopath, psychopath, whatever.
I also have to say, I am highly surprised that Nathaniel spoke up and admitted to the crime. I did not think he was going to do that. Magical communities, when wizards are duking it out, you don't step in the way of, you know, damage it in the way, you don't step in the path of to protect somebody else simply to protect them, even if it's wrong in a lot of books, because it accomplishes nothing, really.
Putting some comparisons to another well-known magical series, at the very beginning, Nathaniel has always shown strong Slytherin tendencies with being cunning and stuff behind the other things. However, in this chapter, he was showing straight up Gryffindor, like, this isn't right, I need to take action now, this isn't the time for preparation.
You're not wrong.
He might be a Slytherin.
However, he was also showing a strong loyalty to Mrs. Underwood, because if it wasn't for Mrs. Underwood, I don't think he would have gone.
Mrs. Underwood is his Hufflepuff.
I was going to say, speaking by that logic, Underwood is Hufflepuff, or Mrs. Underwood is Hufflepuff, hands down. She's always the one bringing the food and the snacks, and she's always the one that cares, and she seems fairly loyal even when she's not supposed to be. Mm-hmm. She is the motherly figure.
She's the Hufflepuff mom.
Yeah.
But
so,
and then there's Lovelace. We found out what his objective is. We found out to a degree what the amulet's going to do. It's going to help him assume the mantle of Prime Minister.
Yep.
He's going to kill the current Prime Minister.
Oh yeah.
Which apparently is a thing that you're allowed to do.
Apparently. I liken it to the Mirror Universe in Star Trek with the ISS Enterprise and all of the other starships. In order to assume a higher rank, you basically have to kill your superior officer, and if you do that, you assume their rank, or you take over their rank.
See, I don't think it's a matter of it's perfectly legal and fine to do so. More like it's not. It's just if you can get away with it, go for it. Go ahead.
Well, so, okay, this might be an older reference for people who didn't watch this anime, especially because this was from a really, one of the first couple of arcs.
Yeah.
So, for anyone who watched Bleach growing up, okay, so you might not know where I'm going with this.
Yeah.
So, one of, what are they called? The groups in the Soul Society.
There were the Rebirth.
Divisions. So, one of the divisions, Division 13, all about strength. They did no, magic and stuff. It's all about strength. The way you grow up higher in rank is by defeating the previous one. And the captain, Kenpachi, literally killed the previous captain and assumed his rank. and no one's ever been able to beat him because he is so strong, even though he doesn't he can't like get to his Shikai form or even his Bankai form, which is usually a requirement to become a captain. But
Yep.
since he killed the previous one, he automatically gained that rank.
Yep.
So I wonder if it's like a really, really old tradition
Could
in
be.
the magician society that's never been like
Challenge.
outlawed. Never been outlawed. So it's like, oh, you've killed it. Okay, so there's still some processing, but until further notice, you are the prime minister.
I'd
Also, no one to really challenge that way of thinking.
Yeah. There was a split second in this chapter, just a brief moment, where Nathaniel actually felt sorry for Underwood, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Which led to him stepping in front of that bullet for Underwood. He could have gotten away scot-free had he just left the house.
He should have just taken Mrs. Underwood and ran,
Yep,
honestly.
but he decided to take a bullet for Underwood, and this is his reward.
He was effectively trying to take Mrs. Underwood's advice in hopes that maybe him telling the truth and coming clean and
Yep.
maybe playing it up like some slightly idiot, like super smart in some areas, super idiotic in other areas could save the Underwood house, maybe.
Come out the hero.
Yeah, he's
Pardon?
trying to do right by the people that he has cared for him since he was 6 years old, 5 years old. However, he
5.
accidentally, 5. However, in his ignorance, he went about it the wrong way.
Yep.
Instead of going to Underwood, he should have gone to Instead of going to Mr. Underwood, he should have gone to Mrs. Underwood.
Yep.
There we go.
Part of me kind of would have. So we all know that we have all hated Underwood in the
Yep,
beginning.
absolutely, 100%.
Part of me would have been curious if Mr. Underwood, seeing where this was going, had like that last thing of like having a noble spirit and just trying to quietly be like, he doesn't know what he's talking about. John, you need to leave. I will deal with you at a later date. Just like
Also-
trying to gently encourage him to leave, get out. You don't know what's going on, and just be like, don't forget, you're taking the missus out. The missus has said something about going to do a chore. Go see her, see what she wants. And just like that quiet cue to get them both out so he could buy them time. I would have liked that, but then I know it's not always happened, but I'm just a sucker for like good character arcs. I am a
Yeah.
sucker for that.
Also, quick thought. If Nathaniel had gone to get Mrs. Underwood instead of going to Mr.
Yep.
Underwood and taken her and left, leaving Mr. Underwood and Lovelace by themselves for Lovelace to effectively kill off Mr. Underwood, that would have put more on Lovelace, like more heat on Lovelace because of the fact that the Amulet of Samarkand has been reported stolen.
Yep.
Not just with the whole recent things in the last couple days in the book, but before that, when Lovelace originally stole the amulet was pretty much reported stolen. And there was already an investigation going on about the murder of the original owner, which Lovelace had done. Like, he had someone go and murder the original owner so that way he could get the fucking amulet. So, Lovelace to kill Underwood, the Underwood household, with Underwood's position in the ministry, that would have just put more heat on Lovelace.
Another point I want to make up too, like I imagine it's been said a few times in the book, but I'm just realizing apparently there's only 300 magicians in the ministry.
Yep.
Like, sure, that's quite a few, but when you look at like the population of London as a whole,
Yep.
Oh,
Like,
Earth's population as a whole.
that's a small number
Oh, yeah.
compared to how expansive it seems the magician community is.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
So I imagine you have to have either a certain amount of knowledge or a certain amount of power to become a minister.
Mm-hmm. Also, it's probably going to be dependent on. There's probably only 300 ministers because that's probably needed for that region of the world.
True. Maybe
Yeah.
it's based on like a population thing, like the bigger the population. Like I imagine if it's like the Asian community or even like India, it's much larger.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, you know how different parts of the world have like their own governments and whatnot. It's probably utilizing a similar, if not the same, just within the same concept as normal world politics.
So, there's a couple of things here that I want to point out briefly, just towards the end of this chapter. Lovelace has made a critical error, I think.
He's made several, but what's the first one you think of?
Just-
He monologued? He monologued.
I mean, you're not wrong. Monologuing always gets you in trouble. Because they now know what he's all about. And we know that they're going to survive because there's another 15 chapters in this book, but that's meta-knowledge and all that shit.
Well, for all we know, it could just switch to Bartimaeus for the rest of like, oh no, the kid died. I gotta do this and this to get the tin. Dear.
I mean, you're not wrong. But Lovelace, first, has said, you are weak, boy, just like your master. He is underestimating Nathaniel's abilities. And second, he has failed to take into account that Bartimaeus might still be hanging around, which we know for a fact he is.
And Lovelace still, and just because of the fact that Bartimaeus was able to sneak in to the office just after them, means that Lovelace hasn't freaking noticed yet.
Lovelace is all consumed. He's got tunnel vision, and I think that's going to cost him dearly, because tunnel vision usually always does that.
Yeah. There are many things that can make an incompetent magician. Loss of control being one of them, and not being aware of your shit being another.
You know what I think it is?
I was going to say hubris.
Hubris. Lovelace is overconfident.
Yeah.
Which is where people tend... When you get overconfident, it's where people tend to fuck up.
Yeah.
Didn't his demons basically said that he was becoming too reckless?
Yep.
Something like that.
Yep. And his demons were mentioning that they were just waiting for an opportunity to strike and give us a taste of what for.
Well, Bartimaeus and Jabor, when they were escaping from the tower.
Farquhar. I think it was Farquhar, actually.
Farquhar? Well, Bartimaeus and his rescuers, when they were escaping from the tower, there was a conversation that took place. We got some information there that things are starting to crumble and that magicians are becoming overconfident in their abilities. They think they are invincible, and that's when you start to fuck up. That's when things start to fall apart. That's when control starts to slip, because magicians always think more highly of themselves than they ought to. And it's in this book, they mentioned it's been a repeat pattern throughout time. This is the way things always go.
This doesn't sound all too relevant right now. Not at all.
It's a little close to home, doesn't it?
A little way too close to home.
Empires rise, empires stay, empires fall. This is the way things go. It's the natural order. Yes.
On a slightly lighter note, we know that there's lenses that the magicians wear in order to, like, see onto the other planes.
Yes.
But Lovelace still wears glasses.
Yep.
So I'm wondering if you can't get like contact lenses with your right prescription along with like the lenses to see the different realms. Like magic hasn't gone that far yet. And so you still gotta wear glasses, which I imagine would suck.
See, now, when they're talking about this lens, these lenses that you can use to see on the other planes, I imagine that lens from Dragon Ball Z that Vegeta wore. It's over 9,000!
Oh, see, I picture like a contact lens.
Oh, okay.
Because in previous chapters, Nathaniel had said he was already wearing it, and Underwood didn't notice. So I imagine if it was like something that obvious, then Underwood would be like, Why are you wearing your lens already?
It's more
ignorant boy.
It's more
like the
just
pair of glasses in the beginning.
It's more just a humorous image that came to my mind. Is just them wearing this like big bulky device on the side of their head.
True.
Because I'm a fucking nerd. What do you want?
It's all good.
Guys, sorry. Go ahead.
The last thing I have to mention is that I would like to think that Mrs. Underwood is kind of getting an inkling something's going on, because even though we didn't see her this chapter, we heard her, and she sounded concerned, no doubt, from how Mr. Underwood looked. So part of me would have hoped she'd be like, oh, I need to leave the house for a bit, but with her character arc and how we know she is, she would wait to see if she can be of, like, assistance somehow.
I also don't believe that Mrs. Underwood is stupid. She is extremely caring, but I think she is a lot more perceptive than she's being given credit for. And I think she knows a lot more about what's going on than she lets on. I think she is I think she is purposely playing stupid.
Yeah.
And I think she's always purposely played stupid. Knowledge is power, but if you give that knowledge away, you're going to show your hand, you're going to show the cards in your hand, right? Yeah. The more information...
So she's like Elle Woods.
She's what?
She's like Elle Woods.
I would assume so. She's like Elle Woods in that respect, yes. And basically she has the knowledge. She's just not acting on it. I have a feeling she knows a lot more about what's going on than she's actually letting on.
Maybe she's waiting to utilize those skills and that knowledge for the right moment.
I can see it now. The climax of the book in a few chapters. Like, everything's just on the very edge. Things are about to start going off left, right, and center. Mrs. Underwood steps in and just says something, and just everything falls apart.
Or, she just, like, spills all of the tea.
That's it. Mrs. Underwood is now the hero of the book as far as I'm concerned.
Yep. The real
Mrs.
MVP.
Underwood just appears during the final climax, sipping her tea, and just says, sit, and all of a sudden, like, all of the djinn appear and force everyone to sit down, and they can't get up because they're level 20 djinn. And she summons like 10 of them. 10 level 20 djinn. No one can get up, and she makes them all sit down and talk out their feelings.
Oh, I love it, I love it, I love it.
I kind of want to make her an NPC now.
Do it.
Just make her as an unassuming NPC, but really she's like level 20 something.
Yep.
Max level something.
Yep.
She's a part of the Valici family. Yeah. Briar refers to her as Grandma number 2.
Yeah.
So.
Or, she's like an unassuming NPC in a different family or something like that. I'm thinking level 20 Warlock.
She could be the grandma at the cow farm.
With that being said, I think this is a good place to cut this conversation off.
Okay.
It's a good place to cut this chapter off, this episode.
Next chapter is Bartimaeus.
Yep, we're going to find out what happens, I think. So, yeah, guys, this has been Chapter 30 and Episode 46 of the Idiot Book Nook. Thank you very...
Chapter 29, what are you talking about?
Oh, sorry, Chapter 29 and Episode 45. I gotta stop mixing up my chapters. That's been a thing over, like, the last several sessions that we've had. This is Chapter 29 and Episode 45 of the Idiot Book Nook. Thank you very much for joining us. We hope you've enjoyed the conversation and the discussion and the reading and the analytical crapshoot that we've had, whatever the fuck you want to call it. Guys, if you want to follow us on social media, linktr.ee/idiotbooknook. You can find our socials for all three of us. You can find our podcast feeds. You can find links. You can find a link to our YouTube. And if you would like to leave us a voicemail message that we can use on our podcast for a listener feedback episode, you're more than welcome to do so at anchor.fm/idiot-book-nook, which you can also find through our link tree and all that jazz. I'm feeling good. We're coming around. We got 14 chapters left of this book. And it's been a pleasure. So, for the idiot... You what?
I was about to say, if we did, like, 3 chapters each Twitch session...
We're done in 5 sessions.
Yeah.
For the Idiot Book Nook, I'm Blazewing.
I am the Reading Dragon.
I'm Lady Punnet.
And we will see you for Chapter 30 and Episode 46. See you soon.